So as you can see, as you're rubbing it off, it just leaves some parts in the dark. Today we're going to turn this stereo cabinet into a hope chest by using wood stain as a glaze over paint. If you haven't seen my face before, I'm Angie, and I help people expand their creativity. Without further ado, let's get into the project. For supplies, you're going to need a stereo cabinet. I find that working on my knees gets very tiresome, so I also have this foam piece here that I will link in the description. It has saved my knees many times. You will need a paint brush, screwdriver to open your paint with. Please subscribe. You will also need a razor. We're going to be using dark walnut as our stain. You'll need some rags to clean your piece. We are going to be using a paint called Clay Mask. I've found it recently and fallen in love with it, so go ahead and check that out. And I will try to leave a link for this in the description as well, along with all the rest of the supplies that we'll be using today. We will also need something to hold our paint in. I just went ahead and wrapped this in cellophane since it had already been used. Last but not least, if your stereo cabinet has any fabric in it and you don't like the fabric, you will need to get a little bit of extra fabric. And the fabric I'm using is this right here. First, we are going to clean our project, and I know a lot of people use like a TSP solution, which I will link in the description below. I just use water unless there's like major stains on it, and that seems to work for me. If you're looking for a good way to get any goo or any just residue, this goo off that I just used works perfect. Ew. The goo off container actually needs some goo off on it. It's sticky. Now that we have cleaned our piece, we need to gut the inside, which will be so much fun. So let's open it up and see what's inside. Now, as you can see, I have taken the actual parts out, and all I had to do was unscrew 4 screws for each one. This space right here is where the 8-track player was, this is where the record player was, and this is where the tape player was. It's fairly simple to take out the guts, no problem at all. We're going to take out the rest of it though. As you can see in here, we still have wires to take out, speakers, and this whole part right here needs to be cut out. So I'm going to grab a jigsaw and we'll get started. We were having trouble with the jigsaw, and it's because this is made of particle board, so it was really hard to get through. We were unable to get all the way into the corners as I had expected we'd be able to do, so I have a solution. Let me show you what we have cut out, and then I'm going to show you my solution, because I am super creative and I always have an answer to every problem. As you can see, it's not cut out quite straight, but that is totally fine because I have a solution. Trim! I'm going to go ahead and put trim all along this side and all the other sides. That way you won't even know that the jigsaw sucked. Before we start cutting the wires, we're going to pull them first to see if they come out. Alright, so I'm just going to keep pulling and cutting until I get all the wires out, and then I'll be right back. Alright, my daughter Bella wants to join us today.
Next up, we are going to be taking out the speakers.
Alright, next we're going to take out the speakers. They have about 4 screws in them, and it should be pretty easy just to get them out. So give me a second, I'm going to take out the speakers, and I'll be right back. I've got all the speakers and the cord out, so it has no wiring inside. There is some sawdust in there, so the next thing I'm going to do is just grab my shop vac and get the sawdust out. I probably won't show you that part because you probably know what that looks like, so I will see you in a minute. We have one more thing that I forgot about, and it's the fabric that is in our speaker. So right now would be a good time to take a razor and cut all the way around the fabric, and we'll want to cut it as close as we can to the inside layer. If we can get in there a little bit deeper than where the wood is, that would be great, but we want to cut this all the way out, and then don't cut it out in pieces. We're going to save that to make our template for our new one. So let's get started. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just start cutting from the bottom, and then I'm just going to keep cutting around until I get it out. we got the first piece out, and it's all in one piece. We're going to set that to the side. I'm going to get the other one off, and then we will continue with our project, which the next thing will be is painting. Now, remember to clean the areas where there might be any little bit of fuzz or anything like that around here, because the paint is not going to stick to the fuzz. So that's what I'm doing right now. Next step is to remove the handles. Alright, got the handles and the screws. I generally put my handles and screws in some sort of bag, a plastic bag or a paper bag, just so I know where they are. I'm going to go put them in a special place, and then we're going to get started painting. Like I said before, I like to use a roller for all of the flat pieces. It goes on so much faster than a paintbrush, and it leaves a smooth finish as long as you're using the right type of roller. And then I'll just go in with a chip brush for any little indentations, and this takes care of it. Let's get started. Here we go. Doesn't matter which way you roll the paint, any way will do. So I just do it in kind of a random pattern, whatever works for me. I find painting to be really relaxing, and it's just kind of almost my way of meditation. So I'm going to go ahead and set you guys back down and paint the rest of this. And you see how it's going on much thicker than just a brush, and I'm able to cover so much more space. I would not be able to have covered all this space with just a brush in this short amount of time. I'm going to look back at my time frames and tell you how much time it took me to do that. Initiate time lapse now. Now, I'd say that first coat looks pretty darn good. I'm going to go ahead and put a second coat of paint on it, and then I will be right back with you so we can start glazing. Now that we've painted our piece, our next step is to glaze. And like I said, we're going to be doing this with wood stain. Although I'm going to be using the dark walnut stain, you can use any stain that's a little darker. Any stain that's a little darker than the color that you use will turn out just perfect. So let's get started with my favorite part, which is the glazing. We'll open up our stain. Make sure that after you open the stain that you stir it well. And next we're going to just lightly dip our brush into the stain and paint it on the piece. You're also going to need some rags to remove the stain off of your piece. So let me show you. Got about this much on my brush. I'm just going to start brushing the stain onto my piece, making sure that I get it in all the little nooks and crannies. You don't have to be perfect about it on the flat parts. Once you rub the stain off, those parts will get covered as well. The most important thing is to make sure that you are getting all of the indented parts. We will be working one section at a time, so the next step is to grab your rag to wipe it off with. Alright, now that I have a rag, I'm going to take and rub all the stain off of my piece. So as you can see, as you're rubbing it off, it just leaves some parts in the dark and takes most of the rest of the stain off. It does leave a little bit of stain, and it gives it that nice aged look, which is what I'm going for. See, now I forgot to put on gloves, but the beautiful thing is coconut oil will take this right off. And you just want to keep rubbing and rubbing until you don't have anywhere else to rub and nothing else comes off. If you miss any spots, just go back in and give it a little rub with the stain. Alright, and I think this is turning out beautiful. Just give me a minute because you're going to love this when I'm done. But I bet you can see how great this is turning out. I went ahead and let the stain dry overnight. Next, we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing to bring some of the color back out. If you haven't seen one of my dry brushing videos, I'll link it in the eye. And then I'll also put it at the end of the video. So make sure after this video, you go and watch the dry brushing video. To get started, we're just going to use this same color of paint, and I'll dip my brush just lightly into the paint. Just a little bit. I don't have much excess, so I think I'm good to go. And then now what I'm going to do is just come back in over these parts and just lightly brush over them. There shouldn't be any paint going into the actual creases. It should just be going over the top. Now, I say there shouldn't be any paint going into the creases, but if some does, it's okay. Just don't intentionally try to put the paint in the creases. Coming back in, just lightly running my brush over where the majority of my stain is. And then you want to do this until you get the desired look. Now, do notice that I am dry brushing along the side. And I'm also going to dry brush along the top, just where we put that extra bit of stain to make it blend. Make sure you do the top as well. Use the dry brush to blend in your paint and your stain. Now that I've brushed over my piece again with the paint, I'm going to come back in and paint all the areas. Let's get started. And enter time-lapse mode. 3, 2, 1, go. Now I'm also going to do this just around the outsides of where the speakers are going to go, because I want to make sure that the fabric that I place in there, if a little bit of the wood is revealed, then it'll still be painted. Alright, our next step is to put a coat of clear coat on, and I will leave a link to some of the products in the description below that I use. I tend to use Mod Podge watered down, or I also use polyurethane, which is water-based. So either of those works great. I also can use sprays it sometimes. So it just depends on my project and my mood. But I will see you in a little bit after I get done clear coating this, but I'll see you once I get done clear coating this piece of furniture. And then the next thing we're going to do is make our templates for our fabric out of our pieces that we cut out. We're going to get our handles on. We're also going to get inside here, do some painting in there, and also get our trim in there and whatnot. So we have a lot coming up still. I hope you're still with me. If I'm going too fast or too slow, please leave me a message in the comments below. That rhymed. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear coat. Bye. Just for now.